Mic check. 1, 2. I think we got it. Hey everyone, I'm Necromuncher. Let's draw. As you can probably hear, I got myself a new microphone, so you don't have to hear poorly edited, static noise-filled bad jokes and can focus on appreciating the art without cringing from awful audio. And by art, I mean bad jokes, with a sprinkle of pop culture references in digital drawing format. Now, the reason I allow myself to ramble about the audio as if you care, and not talk about the sketch on the screen is that I delete it. I delete the sketch. I didn't like it and I drew another one, or 6 instead. I don't know why I keep pushing myself to the corner of drawing multiple characters and having to pose and detail each of them, especially from behind.
I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
By now, you keen viewers might have noticed exactly what characters I decided to draw today, and these of course are the titled yet nameless playable characters of the game Slay the Spire. I'm talking about the Ironclad, the Silent, the Defect, and the Watcher. I gotta say, I kinda like this game. I played it a normal amount of hours, and I also own a copy of the Kickstarter board game, and of course I had to get the collector's edition because I like it a reasonable amount. Anyway, I've been thinking about an idea for this third installment of the channel, and people seem to like my last video mashing 2 popular shows, so I figured why not make another mashup, this time of things that might be a little more niche but are very dear to my heart. On one side of the fusion, we have our 4 Slayers, and on the other side, we must have some sort of Spire. For any of us who aren't native English speakers, I didn't know what a Spire is until I read the Mistborn books by Brandon Sanderson in English for the first time, and had to look for the definition. So don't feel bad if you're only now learning that a spire is just a fancy thing to put on a tower if you think your tower doesn't tower enough. Well, as you can see, the other side of our fusion for today, meaning the tower I decided to draw, is the Dark Tower. The one from The Lord of the Rings, with the giant flaming eye, Barad-dûr if you're a nerd and speak Elvish. Again, this might be a little niche, but I like Lord of the Rings, a normal amount, like I do Slay the Spire. I mean, I read the books once or twice, saw the movies, have the One Ring on my keychain, you know, normal fan stuff. It's not like I have a meter-tall Lego diorama of Barad-dûr that I spent a week building and is on my dining table because it's so large I don't have anywhere to put it and my partner is so nice about it, but I suspect she wants it. Sorry about that. Back to drawing. Oh, look at that. Without even noticing, we got to the line art. I chose to line in the defect first since they're the one closest to the camera, so to speak. And I wanted to make sure to not put in too much detail in them while I still have some self-control. You'll see that as we progress I stole over smaller and smaller parts of the piece, adding tiny details that needlessly draw the eye. I mean the viewer's eye, not Sauron's. We all know that there's only one thing that draws Sauron's eye, and that's me, but I don't draw it until later in the video, so you'll have to wait. In the meantime, you can see how I try to figure out how the defect legs should look from behind. I probably should have used the defect mini I got with the board game to help me better understand how they're built, but for some reason I didn't do that and instead chose to theorize based on the front and try to find card art that might show some backside. In their hands, the defect holds a map, and more specifically, the map of the Spire. As the boss of the act, I design a symbol for Barad-dûr, inspired by the beautiful designs for the bosses from the game's map. Of course, I couldn't put that much detail into it because it's a minuscule symbol on a map that is a prop of one of arguably 6 characters, and this video has a deadline. So, with the map and the orbs lined in, that's the defect done and we're off to the Silent. I finished the skullmet if you will, faster than I expected, so I made sure to stall on individual hair strands for good measure, and not for the last time. Then I proceed to draw a cloak and dagger, and also a hand to hold the dagger. I intentionally drew very little visual features of the Silent, as well as made her very lumpy. Her whole thing is being stealthy and deadly, so I figured she should wear an elvish-like cloak and blend her silhouette into the rocks as much as possible. Who knows, maybe she's a
burglar. Hobbit.
A burglar hobbit?
Once I'm done with the final texture of the horns, I swiftly move to line in the Watcher. Much like the Silent, the Watcher stands at the edge of what I can only assume is a steep, jagged, very high, rocky cliff. Her clothes are puffy and drooping, which is usually hard to work with, except now there's a giant bow tie that holds everything together. It both helps to better understand where each body part should be placed, and conceal about half of her body, so I don't have to draw that much drooping and folding cloth. The rest of the outfit is somewhat plain from a linework point of view, except for her sash, which adds an interesting horizontal line across the back. I put her hair in a bun and made sure to line in all the individual hair strands that would definitely be visible with her soon-to-be black hair. A non-elven ear and these hair spike thingies, topped off with fabulous bangs, then for her all-important staff. The fact that she has a staff in Middle-earth must mean that she's a secret, never-before-mentioned purple wizard, or Istari if you're a nerd. Following this line of thought, this could mean that the Watcher is actually one of the Mire, and that she is in fact some form of deity who's here to guide and assist our heroes on their way to save Middle-earth. Honestly, that makes perfect sense. Just replace one of the Slay the Spire bosses with the Balrog. You'll see my point. And if the Watcher is this group's Gandalf, then there has to be a Sam. I mean, the ring would use anyone to get back to the Dark Lord, and while hobbits are tough to corrupt, I think Frodo wasn't that special. Damn, he was the third hobbit in a row to be the ring bearer, and wasn't even the first in his family. But Sam? Oh boy, show me a single other hobbit who would not only go to Mordor for a friend, while dealing with that friend's progressively worsening hallucination, and a dickish nightmare creature suffering from severe DID, who hates you, but also do all that while carrying the entire party inventory on his back. So yes, if there's a Gandalf, there must be a Sam. As you can tell by the backpack, I chose the Ironclad to play the part. He is the only one focused on actually moving forward. He has his sword out just in case, and truth be told, he might be the only one strong enough to actually carry all this stuff. Along with the pots, pans, and sausages, the party picked up some relics along the way. An ant's branch, Shelob's eye, and an elven artifact that seems to hold memories of things that were, things that are. Whoa, I got lost there for a moment. We go back to line the curvy shapes that form the twisted grip on the ironclad sword, which has suspiciously orcish influences in its design. For the shoes, or greaves rather, I tried again to theorize how they would look from behind, instead of looking at the physical 3D minis I own. They ended up fine, or at the very least recognizable, which is really the goal here. I put a shoe on the other foot, then finally add the iconic upwards curving elvish orcish blade of the ironclad's sword. I chose to place it in such a way that it would break into the silent silhouette and give a sense of depth and perspective. with our quartet of Spire climbers done, feet not included, I go forth to start lining the most important character in this drawing, which is, of course, the tower. Now be warned, any and all details you see me drawing on the screen will probably change, move, or be deleted until the point where I finish designing and lining the tower. That's because past Necromancer was a dick and left all of the hard work to the lining process, as if it's not tedious enough. As references for Baradur, I started by using the pictures from the movies. Then, roughly 5 minutes later, when I grew tired of the insane amount of details in what is apparently a whole freaking vertical city, I was reminded by my partner that I have a lower detail, official 3D representation of the tower in Lego form. So, taking some inspiration from said impulse buy heap of plastic, I managed to tone the details down a bit. When I realized that even with the dumbed down Baradur for Dummies version, there are still too many nooks and crannies to represent accurately, I decided to do whatever looked cool and excuse it with using the book as a guideline instead of the movies. And since Tolkien is no longer with us, no one could tell me anything, but you're welcome to try in the comments. Jokes aside, it took me a very long time to even get to the point where I draw the tower itself, and not just pillars, rooks, bridges, walls, moats, tunnels, and so much spikes. Sonic would be so jealous he'd have to wear that spiky studded self-defense bra. And that's a mental image for you. I'm not making that meme. With the magic of editing, we jump to lining in the top of the tower. In this part of the line art, you'll see me using the symmetry tool a whole lot. Despite what you might think, it saves me more than just doing twice the amount of work. It actually allows me, as I go, to see if I drew the right angles and if each segment feels solid and in theme with the other parts. Something that would be incredibly hard for me to see if I would have only drawn half the tower, then duplicated and flipped. So, today's piece of artistic education: don't be fools, use your tools. They're there for a reason. 'Tis the season for treason. Only if you have an evil overlord. Speaking of, our tower needs a flaming gaze of the evil Sauron searching for the One Ring. I assume it's a crucial relic for his build. Of course, our party has it as their group's starting relic, and Sauron can't have it. I try many methods for drawing the flaming eye in a way that looks like an actual orb made of flames, which is very hard to do in the line art phase, and for a future project I think I'll just paint the fire. For now though, I end up going the shark teeth method of drawing encapsulating jagged lines from the perimeter inwards. At some point, I switched to a dual axis symmetry to really sell the fire bursting in all directions look. Next, I draw Mount Doom, our party's real destination, where they're going to throw the defect into the lava as a sacrifice to the six-eyed Weld Niao. I block in the smoke rising from the mountain, then proceed to put some rocks in the foreground to hide as many feet as possible, as well as provide a nice sense of depth. Since this video is planned to be uploaded on August 10th, for the sixth and final character and in honor of Smaugust, I drew a dragon. Well, technically it's a fell beast, and it doesn't count as a real dragon. Also, in the books it's described with a beak and not a jaw full of teeth. But who cares, really? In my opinion, dragons and wyverns and fell beasts with teeth are cooler than weird birds. And since this is my channel, mine is the only opinion that matters, but you are more than welcome to write your argument in the comment section. For the coloring, I start by blocking in big shapes in the background with relatively muted and dark colors. This is going to be a recurring theme throughout the whole drawing, since Mount Edge, Doom, and the Dark Tower are dark. This also means there's quite a lot of cutaway footage of me shading 100% black with 95% black. You bet I set 5 centimeters away from the screen to see if my undead ass made any difference with the semi-transparent brush or if I was using the eraser again. Now, I won't put you through all that riveting process and instead we'll jump to the bits that have bright and shiny colors. For example, the lava, colored with lava-appropriate lemon yellow and orange for a special citrusy fragrance. A similar treatment for the fiery eye of the evil Dark Lord at the top of his dark tower, cause he deserves some nice fruits too. A base of light grey in 4 shades for our not dragon, then we go to color our party members. Starting with bronzish yellows for the defect's metal parts and the complementary cyan blue for their fractured core. I made the map out of parchment and the cable wrappings out of vividly colored plastic. I know it's inaccurate based on the defect's back of the headshot, which you can see when you enter a rest site with them, but I think that it looks much better than just more grey. I accent the bronze with some darker bronze to make the metal look like it has a metal sheen and to partially shade the parts that need shading. I go through a similar process with the defect's bright blue cloak, as well as with their lovely orbular core. A little spoiler, this won't be the final layer of coloring, so a lot of this nice shading will be gone by the end of the video. However, this time I actually planned ahead, so this layer of coloring is actually my sample palette for the blending process. This is important to do now, so later when I go and make this piece look painted, similar to the game, I can focus only on the blending itself and not on the color choice, most of the time. Here you can see a sneak peek to my painting process in the form of a frost orb. I start with the general wireframe of the ice seed, not really a sphere, and gradually complete the in-betweens with darker blues and cold greys. It takes a while I get everything looking good enough, but honestly it's probably because my experience with painting is close to none. There has to be a better or at least quicker method to paint, and if I would have had any form of formal art education I might have known it, but since I don't, I am forced to do it my way. And while it was enjoyable spending that much time almost mindlessly painting while watching Colby's D&D optimized build videos on the other screen, I don't think this is a very thrilling process to watch, necessarily. Unrelated, Colby is a great creator with nice attitude and a calm voice who looks like Homelander's good twin, and he has awesome D&D content over at his channel D4. Back to the drawing, I channeled the frost and lightning, and now it's time for the dark orb. I took inspiration for this orb's decoration from the defect's unique uncommon relic symbiotic virus. Done with channeling, it's the Watcher's turn to be colored. I obviously start with the soft lilac for her body and a dull bronze for the staff and hair spikes. I layer in a dark purple for her coat, then proceed with the terribly unfitting yet entirely accurate dark cyan blue bow tie and leggings. The sash gets a soft magenta and her hair is colored with a base dark grey that would later be painted black. Then it's the Silent's turn, starting with a rock colored silhouette and a bone colored skullmet. Her hair is silver, so I start with a light grey base, and the cloak gets a hint of green to bring a little life and visual variation. I try to blend in the cloak with the surrounding rocks by using the same shaping and colors as I did with the ledge, while still incorporating some folds of cloth as best as I can. With the dagger properly envenomed and an eye in a matching bright poison green, I move on to block in our blocky bloke. The Ironclad gets an appropriate fruit juice orange base to raise his max HP. Then I start coloring each piece of clothing he has with the correct shade of reddish brown. For obvious reasons, the backpack gets most of my attention in the form of properly casting shadows from the various dangling items. A washed out tan sleeping mat, near black pots and pans, delicious meat red sausages and a warm grey satchel, topped with the boss keys in red, green and blue, and a proper gradient for the massive blade. Here also I get ahead of myself and start painting and blending just because at this point I'm roughly 15 hours into the drawing and I kinda want to see it getting somewhere near done. And truth be told, after I finish this little part where I color the various relics and net, I do move on to painting, so maybe I'm not really getting too much ahead of myself. Speaking of painting, I start with the characters. Now, we are already at the 20-minute mark, which is almost as long as my Pokeball video in its entirety. So please bear with me as we go through a character painting lightning round. The defect is painted bronze and crystal, along with lighting from the lightning orb. The Silence cloak gets blended further into the rocks, and the horns on the Skullmet get a bony treatment. The Watcher's staff is shined and her clothes get cloth-appropriate folds and creases to give an otherwise very flat outfit some volume. And of course, most of the time I spent on painting the details of the Ironclad, since there's so much going on there. After him, I paint the foreground and midground ground and rocks, which are technically not characters, but I put them in the lightning round regardless. Next living character is the Fell Beast and his itty bitty cutesy Nazgul rider. Then I start painting the actual tower. Now, if you're hearing some agitation in my voice, know that it's because I spent all too many hours painting black on black on black in a seemingly never-ending series of details, most of which were practically unnoticeable once I zoomed out. So after I gave you a sample of painting rocks and lighting them with lava, let's jump to the top of the tower where I added some nice indoor lamps and a bright top piece that really ties the aesthetic of the whole place together. Even though I added an effect layer on the eye that would shed a bright light on that whole area of the painting, I still needed to blend in the bricks around the eye in order to really sell how bright this thing is. To make the chasm acting as a lava-filled moat surrounding the tower, I wanted to have bright light reflected from the various jagged rocks. I didn't plan this bit, but honestly I can say I'm proud of how it turned out. Maybe I should plan less when painting. I sampled the brightest oranges from the Mount Doom lava, and using a low opacity brush I gently went over the general wireframe of the rocks, similar to what I did with the Defect's frost orb when I painted it. Once I went over the general structure, and a little bit during that process, I go over some of the planes and flat surfaces to really pop all the shapes out with bright lights and the resulting hard shadows. Throw in some liquid hot magma. Then we go from the moat to the mount. First, I soften the lines of the rocks with the darker colors dominating the center of each rock segment, in order to make it look more shadowy in contrast with the lava flow. I make sure to also go over the mountain's surrounding area and make it all look cohesive. The lava blending process is very similar to most other blending I did throughout the piece, except here I wanted to really make it look like it glows from within. To do so, I add very bright yellows and whites in the center of each connecting node, as well as at the core of most lava lines. As the lava strays further from its origin point at the top of the mountain, it should cool and go dimmer, so at the lower parts of the flow I use darker oranges and some browns. When painting a liquid like lava, I try to color in the direction of the supposed movement, stroking along the lines of the flow to give it a naturally cascading look. When the lava and surrounding rocks look properly dangerous, I go to light up the skies. I somehow missed talking about the fact that I added lightning, so I'll quickly go over my simple trick to make some decent looking bolts. I use a white color with 100% hardness and opacity in the brush, and toggle the pressure to size option, so when I press harder the brush gets bigger and vice versa. I make sure to start the stroke pressing relatively hard on the stylus to have a thick start, then moving the pen in short and decisive movements towards where I want the lightning to go. Along the path, without lifting the tip of the stylus from the pad, I slowly alleviate pressure, causing the size of the brush to get smaller and smaller to a sharp point. Then I add some more jagged lines with the same method, jutting out from random places in the core bolt, and throw in a glow effect layer. For the smoke and clouds, I use almost a complete opposite method. That is, soft brushes, low opacity, and large circular movements in many layers. The piece is nearly done, but there are some fine and final details I wanted to add. Namely, roughing up the ironclad with nicks and scratches on the armor, and adding a bit of nearly invisible bone texture on the silent skullmet. Some teeny tiny orange dots give the effect of torches on the tower walls, giving the impression of an inhabited place. And trails of flying molten rocks add some action to Mount Doom's eruption. Some minor fixes to smoke I forgot to color, and some of the characters' clothes, as well as barely visible silver highlights to the Nazgul blade, and an artistic vintage-like frame. And we're done. Let's take a look. It is done. This turned out so freaking good. I am so thrilled I got to mesh together these two things I love dearly, and that it turned out really well visually. I did pour into it more hours than I planned, mostly due to the whole painting thing, but I think it was worth it, and I hope you do too. If you want to support me so I could make more stuff like this, I do have a Patreon. I upload there some stuff from the process of making these videos, including sneak peeks and memes. You should join if you like. But even if you don't want to or can't, you could also like and subscribe and share to your friends or foes for free. It would really help me if you would. Tell me in the comments what you want to see next, and for now, bye!